Has this ever happened to you, where your silence unsettled someone more than your words ever could, where your absence spoke louder than any plea, and your refusal to be moved carved a wound deeper than love itself? There is a forbidden power hidden in indifference, and when a woman embodies it, she becomes a mirror a man cannot look away from, yet cannot bear to face. Carl Jung once wrote that we are driven not by what we consciously know, but by what we repress, by what we refuse to meet in ourselves. And in the realm of attraction, nothing exposes the shadow of a man more ruthlessly than the cold, unyielding indifference of a woman who has withdrawn her energy, for her silence is not mere apathy. It is the stripping away of the illusion that he was ever in control. You see, men often believe they desire love, devotion, and warmth. But Jung understood the psyche is trickster-like. It hungers not for peace, but for the tension between opposites. When a woman turns away, when she no longer reacts, when she withholds the nectar of her attention, she unconsciously activates the wound in him that screams, "You are not enough." His shadow, long buried beneath bravado and conquest, now rises to devour him. He feels the ancient terror of abandonment, and in that very moment, she becomes more powerful than any display of affection ever allowed her to be. Indifference is not cruelty. It is sovereignty. It is the refusal to be enslaved by another's approval, or to perform softness in order to secure validation. It is the feminine embodying stoic discipline, the quiet force Seneca once described as the freedom from being compelled by external things. A woman who understands indifference understands that to react emotionally to every provocation is to be ruled by the world outside of her. But to choose detachment when chaos demands reaction, that is mastery. And here lies the paradox. The very indifference that unnerves him is also what awakens his deepest obsession. For what the male unconscious cannot grasp, it seeks to possess. Jung called this the projection of the anima, the man's hidden, feminine image projected onto women. When she withdraws her energy, he feels the distance between who he is and who he longs to be. He wants not merely her presence, but the completion of himself that he believes she carries. Yet her indifference shows him the mirror of his own incompleteness. For you as a woman, this is not about playing games, nor about feigned disinterest. True indifference is born not of strategy, but of deep inner alchemy. It arises when your self-worth is no longer chained to his recognition, when your value is not bartered for crumbs of attention, when you have faced your own shadow, the parts of you that once begged, pleaded, or feared rejection. You emerge untouchable. Your silence is not manipulation, it is truth. It is the unspoken declaration, I am whole with or without you. Imagine how many times women throughout history were told to yield, to soften, to bend so as not to offend male fragility. Yet beneath those layers of conditioning lies the archetype of the untamed feminine, the goddess who does not chase, who does not beg, who with one glance of indifference can unravel the ego of kings. This power is not granted by society nor gifted by men. It is reclaimed from within, from the deepest confrontation with fear of loss. Once you realize that nothing external can complete you, you hold the forbidden power of indifference in your hand. But beware, this power terrifies because it cannot be controlled. Men who are unconscious will brand it as coldness, as arrogance, as cruelty. Why? Because your refusal to cling exposes their dependency on your attention. Your indifference pierces their illusion of dominance. It unveils the truth Jung warned us of, that most of what we call love is projection, fantasy, the psyche's desperate attempt to escape its own loneliness. And when you no longer feed the illusion, he is left with himself, and that is the very encounter most men spend their lives running from. This is why your indifference is not only magnetic, but transformative. It is not merely about attraction, it is about individuation. For just as you claim sovereignty over your worth, you compel him, if he is brave, to confront his own shadow. Your silence can become his initiation, his chance to grow beyond childish need and into true manhood. But whether he rises or collapses is not your concern, for your indifference is not performed for him. It is the natural byproduct of your awakening. And here is the secret most never tell you. The more you withhold your energy from that which diminishes you, the more your energy becomes luminous, radiant, irresistible. Jung understood that the psyche is drawn to what it cannot consume. The more you need nothing, the more everything is drawn toward you. This is the forbidden alchemy of indifference. There is a certain silence that is more terrifying than rage. When a woman no longer trembles, no longer argues, no longer offers her emotional energy as food for another's ego, she enters a realm that few dare to tread. Indifference, when born from true inner freedom, is not emptiness, it is fullness contained. It is the quiet dignity of a soul that no longer bleeds itself out for validation. And in this stillness, a woman becomes a mystery, a riddle that the masculine psyche cannot solve. Jung taught us that what is repressed in the unconscious will always return, not as a gentle whisper but as a haunting presence. When a man feels a woman's indifference, it forces him to meet the ghost of every rejection, every abandonment, every time love was withheld in his past. This is why her detachment feels so unbearable. It is not her silence he fears, but his own emptiness that her silence mirrors back to him. He craves her attention not for who she is, but for the soothing balm it provides to his fractured self. Without it, he feels exiled in his own psyche. But indifference does more than expose the shadow. In him, it liberates her from the chains of performance. For how often has the feminine been told to respond, to soothe, to give endlessly, even when empty? To remain gentle even when disrespected? To stay, even when her soul longs to walk away? Indifference arises when she breaks that cycle. It is her refusal to offer herself as sacrifice upon the altar of another's unhealed wounds. She no longer negotiates her worth with anyone who cannot see it. This is the paradoxical allure that Stoic philosophy also understood. Epictetus taught that freedom belongs only to the one who no longer depends on what lies outside their control. A woman's indifference embodies this truth with flesh and blood. Her refusal to attach her happiness to his presence makes her untouchable. She ceases to be the captive of circumstance, and it is precisely this independence that makes her presence intoxicating. For he senses she does not need him, and that is why he cannot stop needing her. But let us be clear, indifference is not the ice of bitterness. True indifference is not born of hatred nor of cynicism but of transcendence. It is not that she despises him, it is that she does not require him. There is no venom in her silence, only clarity. This difference matters, for bitterness still binds her to the other through resentment, but indifference severs the cord entirely. It is liberation, not entanglement. And here Jung's concept of individuation becomes vital. Individuation is the process of becoming whole, integrating shadow and light, feminine and masculine, conscious and unconscious. When a woman reaches a state of indifference, it often marks a turning point in her individuation. She no longer projects her inner lack onto a man, no longer waits for him to confirm her beauty, her worth, her existence. She ceases to beg the external world to reflect the fullness she has cultivated within. By withdrawing her need, she retrieves her power from the projection she once placed outside herself. You may feel the fire of recognition here. How many times have you given more than was ever returned? How many times have you tried to explain, to argue, to plead, believing that if you just gave a little more he would finally see you? And how many times did that energy drain you until there was nothing left but exhaustion? Indifference is the moment you stop pouring into a cup with no bottom. It is the moment you realize that your energy is sacred, and only you decide where it flows. Men often call this playing hard to get, but there is no game here. What they call hard to get is simply the truth of a woman who has reclaimed herself. It is the natural stance of someone who has seen through illusion and refuses to bargain with her essence. In the face of her detachment, he may grow desperate, frantic, even angry. He may try to provoke her, to stir emotion from her silence, because as long as she reacts, he still has her. But her indifference denies him this feeding. It starves the pattern. It forces him back into himself, into the discomfort he has long avoided. And yet for the conscious man, her indifference is not punishment, it is medicine. It strips him of false power and calls him to rise. If he dares to face the abyss within himself, her silence becomes the catalyst for his own individuation. He must learn, as Marcus Aurelius wrote, that the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts, not upon her reactions, not upon whether she stays or leaves. Her indifference teaches him to source strength from within. This is why indifference is feared and revered in equal measure. It is the crucible where projections burn away. It is the fire in which the illusions of dependency turn to ash. And on the other side, only truth remains. The truth of who she is, sovereign and whole, and the truth of who he is, stripped of fantasy. Whether he crumbles or ascends is his burden to bear. But she, in her indifference, has already chosen freedom. There is a secret rhythm in the way energy flows between souls. Attraction is not only about words or gestures. It is about who feeds whom, who chases, who withdraws, and who holds the silence. In the unconscious dance between the masculine and feminine, attention itself is currency, and the one who needs it the least holds the most power. Indifference, then, is not absence, it is wealth. It is the woman who has stopped spending herself on what does not multiply her spirit.
Jung warned that we are forever haunted by the figures of our own psyche.
A man projects his anima, the inner feminine, onto women, hoping to find salvation through her love, but when he encounters indifference, he collides with the brutal truth. No woman can complete what he refuses to face in himself. Her silence does not just withhold affection, it exposes the illusion that she was ever the answer to his inner void. And here lies the forbidden truth. Her refusal to play the role of savior is what makes her untouchable. The power of indifference is not in making a man suffer, but in refusing to betray oneself. It is the embodiment of self-possession. She does not need to argue or explain. She does not need to make herself smaller so that he feels larger. Her lack of reaction is a temple where only the worthy may enter, and the unworthy will rage at the locked doors, mistaking her indifference for cruelty, when in truth it is protection. Seneca once wrote that he who is brave is free. This is what indifference really is, bravery. It is bravery to no longer measure yourself by whether he stays or leaves. It is bravery to walk away without looking back. It is bravery to endure the discomfort of silence, rather than settle for crumbs disguised as love. A woman who embodies this courage no longer negotiates her worth. She simply is. And that isness, that unshakable ground of being, is more magnetic than any charm or beauty could ever be. But the path to such indifference is not easy. It requires shadow work. It requires a woman to look into herself and face the parts that once clung, begged, or feared. For beneath every attachment lies a wound. The child who was not chosen. The girl who was abandoned. The woman who was overlooked. To reach indifference, she must sit with these ghosts. She must tell them, I see you. I will not abandon you again by giving myself away where I am not honored. From that integration, from that radical act of self-loyalty, indifference is born. Not the hollow mask of pretense, but the authentic calm of someone who has nothing left to prove. And the paradox deepens. The very detachment that frees her also heightens her allure. For what is more compelling to the unconscious than that which cannot be possessed? A man may not understand why he thinks of her endlessly after she has gone quiet. He may not realize that her indifference has placed him in confrontation with his own hunger. But he feels it all the same. The more she needs nothing, the more his psyche is drawn to her presence. Jung himself would say this is the pull of the self, the psyche's longing for wholeness projected outward. Yet she is not playing with his hunger. She has simply stepped beyond it. This is where many misunderstand indifference. It is not a tactic. It is not about withholding love to manipulate. That is still bondage, still a game of control. True indifference does not calculate. It simply exists as the natural fragrance of a soul that no longer begs. A woman who is free in this way does not carry bitterness, for bitterness would tether her to the past. She carries serenity, and serenity is more dangerous than fire, for it cannot be extinguished. Consider the archetype of the queen, not the fragile girl who seeks approval, but the sovereign woman who rules her own domain. The queen does not chase knights or beg for their loyalty. She sits upon her throne, radiant in her indifference to those who cannot meet her standard. She is not cold but selective. She is not cruel but just. This is the forbidden archetype that patriarchy has long feared, the woman who cannot be controlled by need. Her indifference dismantles the illusion that men hold dominion over her worth. And if you are listening, perhaps you sense this truth stirring in your own bones. Perhaps you feel the resonance of the power you once gave away. Indifference whispers to you that you can reclaim it at any time, that you no longer need to explain why you withdraw, why you choose silence, why you step back. You do not need permission to hold your energy sacred. In fact, it is only when you stop justifying your detachment that you step fully into it. A woman who embodies indifference is not empty. She is overflowing. She has redirected her energy inward, and from this inner fullness she radiates something untouchable. The world feels it. Men feel it. They cannot name it, but they crave it because it is rare. It is the essence of freedom, and freedom is the most forbidden power of all. Indifference is not the death of passion. It is its purification. When a woman reaches this state, she strips away all illusion, all entanglement, all desperate clutching at what was never hers to begin with. It is not that she feels less. It is that she finally feels enough without needing permission to exist. Her silence is not emptiness but completion, the sacred circle closed upon itself. And from this completion radiates a power that cannot be touched, cannot be stolen, cannot be bartered. Jung saw the feminine as both muse and destroyer, light and abyss, the vessel of projection and its undoing. In indifference, the woman becomes the abyss, not to consume but to reflect. The man who gazes into her unshakable calm is confronted with the terrifying mirror of his own lack. He realizes that her value does not hinge on his recognition, and in that moment, his fantasy of dominance collapses. She is no longer the image he projected upon her. She is herself. And the psyche recoils, for it cannot manipulate what stands in wholeness. Yet indifference is not only for him, it is for her. It is the medicine she gives. Herself, after centuries of being told to bend and break for love, it is her rebellion against every whisper that urged her to settle, to beg, to keep quiet, to stay no matter the cost. Indifference is the reclamation of her voice, not through shouting but through refusal. Refusal to waste her sacred essence on those who cannot see. Refusal to prove what has always been self-evident. Refusal to confuse attention with love, crumbs with a feast. And what emerges from that refusal is not hardness but clarity. The woman who embodies indifference is not armored. She is liberated. She does not need to explain why she does not chase, why she does not plead, why she does not contort herself for affection. Her lack of explanation is the explanation. Silence itself becomes her boundary, and silence itself becomes her crown. The Stoics knew this truth well. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. When her thoughts no longer orbit around whether she is desired or rejected, her entire being takes on a different hue. It glows with the rare serenity of one who belongs only to herself. And this serenity is magnetic, because it is so foreign in a world addicted to grasping. Her indifference is not cold. It is the warmth of a fire that no longer begs for oxygen. It burns steadily, quietly, without collapse. The danger of indifference, and the reason it has long been called forbidden, is that it dismantles the very foundation of control. A woman who does not need approval cannot be manipulated. A woman who does not fear loss cannot be threatened. A woman who does not beg cannot be bribed. She is free, and freedom is the one thing that unsettles every system built on possession. And here lies the alchemy. In reclaiming her indifference, she does not reject love, she purifies it. For love born of desperation is not love but hunger. Love born of projection is not love but fantasy. Only when she no longer needs can she truly choose. Indifference opens the space for authentic union, one not born of fear or shadow, but of wholeness meeting wholeness. Imagine this: a man stands before her frantic for reaction, desperate for proof that he still has her in his grasp. But she gives him nothing, not in cruelty but in truth. Her energy remains with her, her gaze calm, her silence unbroken. In that moment the illusion dies. He is forced into himself, forced to see the raw wound he tried to hide behind conquest, behind charm, behind noise. And whether he ascends into growth or collapses into rage is irrelevant, for she is no longer tethered to his choice. Her indifference has already set her free. This is why indifference feels like divinity. It is the goddess archetype embodied, the untamed feminine who cannot be cornered, who cannot be reduced to object or possession. She is not cruel, she is not vengeful, she simply is. Her sovereignty radiates as naturally as sunlight. And like sunlight, it does not beg to be noticed. It shines whether anyone looks or not. For you hearing these words, the invitation is clear. You do not have to wait for permission to embody this power. You do not have to wait for him to change, to notice, to validate. Indifference begins in the moment. You decide to withdraw your energy from what does not nourish your soul. It is born the instant you choose silence over self-betrayal, peace over chaos, dignity over desperation. And in that choice, something ancient awakens. You feel the chains fall, the projections dissolve, the begging cease. You realize that you were never powerless. It was simply that your power was entangled in seeking. Indifference untangles it, and once untangled, it is forbidden only to those who fear freedom. A woman's indifference is not the end of love. It is the beginning of her sovereignty, and sovereignty once tasted cannot be surrendered again. There comes a moment when a woman no longer flinches at the sound of absence, when silence, once unbearable, becomes her sanctuary. In that moment, she discovers the forbidden power that society has long tried to bury, the strength of needing nothing. Indifference is not a mask she wears to conceal pain. It is the transformation of pain into sovereignty. She no longer prays for love to validate her. She embodies the love she once begged to receive. Carl Jung understood that individuation, the journey toward wholeness, requires one to reclaim the projections given to others. For a woman, indifference often marks the moment when she retrieves her worth from the hands of the men she once surrendered it to. She no longer waits for him to recognize her value, because she recognizes it herself. This withdrawal is not an act of vengeance. It is an act of healing. By refusing to be consumed, she becomes whole again. What terrifies men most about her indifference is that it reveals the truth they have long denied. She was never theirs to own. When she no longer bends to their need, when she no longer dances for their attention, they see her as she is, uncontrollable. And this revelation unsettles them more than rejection. Rejection can be argued against, negotiated, even overcome. But indifference offers no opening. It is not a door slammed shut. It is a door that never needed to open in the first place. This is why many mistake indifference for cruelty. They assume her silence is meant to wound. But true indifference does not wound. It simply ceases to bleed. It is not hostility but neutrality. She has stepped beyond the battlefield, beyond the endless cycle of attack and defense, beyond the need to prove herself in the arena of his approval. Her energy, once spent on the struggle, is now reclaimed for herself, and in this reclamation she grows luminous. The Stoics called this state apatheia, not the absence of feeling, but freedom from the tyranny of being ruled by emotion. Seneca wrote that the greatest wealth is a poverty of desires. A woman in indifference lives this truth. She desires nothing from the one who once consumed her thoughts. She has released him, and in releasing him she releases herself. This is not bitterness, it is liberation. She can love, but she does not cling. She can care, but she does not collapse. She stands, unwavering, on the ground of her own being. And the paradox emerges once more. The moment she ceases to chase, he begins to. For what the unconscious cannot have, it cannot stop seeking. He feels her absence like a phantom, an ache that gnaws at him in the quiet hours. He does not understand why her silence echoes louder than her words ever did. He does not realize that her indifference has stripped away his illusion of control, forcing him to confront his own dependence. And in that confrontation he feels both fear and longing. But her indifference is not about him. It is about her. It is the final initiation into her sovereignty. Jung wrote that every woman carries within her the archetype of the self, complete, radiant, untouchable. Yet many lose sight of this, projecting their wholeness onto others, begging for reflection. Indifference is the moment she calls this projection back. It is the moment she no longer looks to his eyes for proof of her existence. She has seen herself, and that sight is enough. Do you feel the quiet power of this within yourself? The moment you stop answering every call, every message, every demand on your spirit, you begin to taste it. The first time you let the silence stretch instead of rushing to fill it, you sense its weight. The first time you walk away without explanation, without guilt, without apology, you realize that indifference is not numbness, it is dignity. It is the sacred no, the refusal to abandon yourself again. This does not mean she cannot love deeply. On the contrary, indifference is the prerequisite for true love. For only when she no longer clings can she truly choose. Only when she no longer fears abandonment can she open without desperation. Indifference strips away illusion, leaving behind a love that is clean, sovereign, and free. It is not the hunger of projection, but the meeting of two whole beings. And if he cannot meet her there, she does not bend. She simply continues on her path, radiant in her solitude. This is the power patriarchy has always feared, the woman who does not need. For she cannot be owned, she cannot be silenced, she cannot be bribed with false promises. Her indifference makes her infinite, for she is no longer chained to the approval of others. She carries herself like a storm contained in human form, not destructive, but untouchable. Indifference, then, is not the end, it is the beginning. It is the threshold through which a woman passes to become sovereign, whole, free. She is no longer the echo of another's desire, she is the voice of her own destiny. Indifference is a kind of alchemy, the turning of wounds into wisdom, of longing into sovereignty, of silence into fire. To the untrained eye it may look like detachment, as if she no longer cares. But in truth she cares differently. She no longer cares to be consumed. She no longer cares to be validated. She no longer cares to beg for scraps from a table she was born to own. She cares only for the integrity of her soul, and that makes her power untouchable. Jung taught that the psyche longs for balance. The masculine pursues, the feminine receives, but when a woman ceases to receive unconsciously, when she withdraws her energy from the patterns that drained her, she alters the entire dynamic. Her indifference forces balance, not by confrontation but by absence. It is the mirror that no longer reflects his illusions back to him. He sees not her but the void within himself, and that void terrifies him. For what he once mistook as her devotion was, in truth, his escape from his own emptiness. And now, stripped of it, he must face what he has long avoided. This is the gift and the terror of her indifference. It is a judgment without words, a verdict without trial. He cannot argue against it, for silence cannot be debated. He cannot seduce it, for it does not bend. He cannot conquer it, for it is not playing the game. Her indifference is a law unto itself, a truth that requires no explanation. And in that law he feels powerless. But indifference is not meant to punish. It is meant to protect. For too long, women have been conditioned to nurture even where there was no reciprocity, to give until their bones ached, to explain themselves into exhaustion. Indifference is the breaking of that chain. It is the refusal to mother the wounded masculine at the expense of her own soul. It is her declaration that she is not a balm, not a bandage, not a substitute for his inner work. She steps back, and in doing so she lets him meet himself. The Stoics called this inner fortress the citadel of the self, the place no external storm can breach. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that if you are distressed, it is not the thing itself but your judgment of it that distresses you. The indifferent woman has mastered this. She does not give her peace away for the price of another's chaos. She does not confuse reaction with connection. Her calm is not weakness. It is dominion. And because she is no longer bound by need, she moves differently in the world. She does not chase approval, yet approval seeks her. She does not beg for attention, yet attention lingers on her. She does not cling to love, yet love in its purest form is drawn to her gravity. For there is nothing more magnetic than freedom. And the freer she becomes, the more the world bends to her without her asking. Yet this power is not without cost. To embody indifference is to endure misunderstanding. Many will accuse her of being cold, heartless, detached. But these accusations reveal more about them than about her. For only those who relied on her neediness feel threatened by her freedom. Only those who fed on her devotion will rage when she withdraws it. Her indifference exposes dependency, and dependency hates nothing more than being seen. But she does not defend herself. She does not waste energy explaining her silence to those who cannot comprehend it. Her indifference teaches that she does not exist to be understood. She exists to be sovereign. Those who resonate with her will feel the rare peace of her presence. Those who do not will call her cruel. Either way, she remains untouched. In Jungian terms, indifference is the moment the anima withdraws her projection. She ceases to be the screen for his fantasies, the vessel of his unconscious yearning. She becomes herself again, whole and indivisible. And in that return, she embodies the self, the archetype of wholeness, the union of opposites. She becomes both soft and unyielding, nurturing and distant love and boundary. Her indifference is not the denial of feeling. It is feeling transfigured into power. And for you listening now, there is a call within this. The call to stop explaining your worth. The call to stop watering barren soil. The call to let silence speak where words have failed. Indifference is not about turning your heart to stone. It is about refusing to cast your pearls before those who trample them. It is about remembering that you are the pearl, and only you decide who is worthy to hold you. And so the forbidden power hidden in indifference is not about men at all. It is about you. It is about the reclamation of your time, your energy, your soul. It is about becoming the center of your own gravity, no longer orbiting around those who cannot meet you. When you embody this, the world shifts. You are no longer pulled, you pull. You are no longer consumed, you radiate. You are no longer defined, you define. This is the truth patriarchy feared, the truth Jung hinted at, the truth the Stoics lived. The one who needs nothing commands everything. And when a woman embodies this indifference, she is no longer a pawn in someone else's story. She is the author of her own. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.